You explain your grief so well that by the end of the explanation, you've lost access to it. Or not lost it exactly. Moved slightly to one side of it, where it's visible but not inhabitable, where you can describe its shape, its origin, what it connects to further back. And somehow the describing is what happens instead of the thing itself. The journal fills up, the understanding deepens, and the feeling stays exactly where it was, perfectly housed, untouched by all that careful attention. If I'm honest, I'm not sure when understanding became the way of not arriving. But at some point, the analysis and the thing being analyzed stopped moving toward each other. They just run alongside. That distance has a name in most traditions. Krishnamurti had a different word for it. He called it escape. Jiddu Krishnamurti spent decades doing something most spiritual teachers don't do. He didn't offer a path. He didn't suggest a practice. He sat in front of thousands of people, in Bombay, in London, in small rooms, and open pavilions, and pointed very precisely, very patiently at the mechanism by which the mind keeps itself imprisoned while believing it is working toward freedom. And then he said, "Don't look at me. Look at this." He noticed something that is easy to miss because it wears the face of sincerity. The person who comes to understand themselves, who journals, who traces reactions to their origins, who can describe their own architecture with real precision, that person is not necessarily moving toward freedom. They may be constructing a more sophisticated version of the same enclosure. He said it plainly in a talk that has stayed with me. Analysis implies the analyzer and the thing analyzed. The analyzer is the censor, the judge, and therefore creates more conflict. The careful, patient, intelligent examination we reach for when we want to understand ourselves. That very movement keeps the division alive. The division between the one who has the feeling and the one who examines it. And that division is active. It isn't neutral distance. It is itself a form of resistance, because the one doing the analyzing is not standing outside the experience, looking in. The examiner is made of the same material as the examined. When you trace the anger back to its origin, the one doing the tracing is also angry, or afraid, or defended, or something. The analyst carries the same conditioning as the thing being analyzed. It cannot actually see what it's examining. It can only interpret it, project onto it, reshape it into something the mind can manage. The analysis doesn't illuminate the conflict. It extends it, quietly, in a register that feels like progress. There is something in Krishnamurti that is difficult to absorb, and the difficulty has nothing to do with complexity. It implicates the very instrument you're using to absorb it. The mind hearing this, considering whether it's true, deciding whether to agree, that mind is exactly what he's pointing at. The one who wants to understand the escape is already inside the escape, has been for some time. And what looks like self-knowledge, what feels like finally arriving at something honest about yourself, may be the mind creating just enough distance from what it's experiencing to feel like it's doing something about it, occupied rather than free. Those are different things. That distinction is where this teaching lives. Today, we're sitting with this, seeing where it lands. Here is where something interesting happens, because the mind, having followed this far, makes a very natural move. It thinks, all right, so I should stop analyzing. In that thought, in that very reasonable, very sincere conclusion, the whole thing starts again. Because who decided to stop analyzing? Who is watching to see whether the analysis has stopped? Who will notice 5 minutes from now that it started again and feel slightly disappointed about it? The controller trying to control the controlling. The same movement, wearing different clothes. This is the part of Krishnamurti that people find genuinely frustrating. Every exit appears to lead back to the same room. You cannot think your way out of thinking. You cannot use analysis to end analysis. The tool the mind reaches for is made of the same material as the problem. The reaching extends the problem quietly in a register that feels like effort towards something. The frustration itself, the "I understand this, but nothing is actually changing," is also part of it. Another layer of the same structure, understanding that understanding doesn't work, and filing that understanding neatly alongside all the others. What I've noticed is that the movement begins before anything is consciously chosen. A feeling arrives, something uncomfortable, something that asks something of you, and before any decision is made, a slight distance is already opening. Some trained reflex, some very old habit, creates just enough remove for the work to begin. The examination, the naming, the careful tracing of origins. By the time any of this is noticed, it has already been running for some time, and it feels, from inside, indistinguishable from honesty. That's what makes this so difficult to see. It wears the face of sincerity completely. Krishnamurti pointed at something underneath all of this, something the whole architecture of self-analysis is designed, without knowing it, to keep at a distance. While there is separation between the thinker and the thought, there will inevitably be conflict. You are that thought, not a thinker observing the thought. The thinker standing slightly apart from its own experience, examining it from a careful remove. That separation is itself a movement of thought. There is no one outside the fear, looking at it. The one who wants to understand the fear is fear, looking at itself, having quietly assumed the costume of someone else. This is what's difficult to sit with, because the entire project of self-knowledge assumes a knower, someone doing the knowing, someone who will eventually arrive somewhere more integrated, more resolved, more at ease. And Krishnamurti is saying that project, however sincere, however sustained, however genuinely motivated by the desire to be free, is built on that fiction. The fiction of the one who stands apart. The knower is the known. The one who wants to end the conflict is the conflict as something that can be seen directly. In the very next moment, the mind reaches for an explanation of what it's feeling. The next time a feeling arrives and something steps slightly back and says, "This is that pattern again," and something can shift here through seeing, not effort, because when there is actual seeing, the direct recognition that the examiner and the examined are not two separate things, but one continuous movement, the analysis doesn't get better. It stops. The way a knot releases when you stop pulling both ends simultaneously. The tension was being sustained by the very effort to resolve it. What remains isn't clarity in the usual sense. The feeling is simply there, present, no longer being managed from a slight remove, no longer being turned into material. Krishnamurti called this perception as distinct from analysis. It isn't a more refined form of attention. When the gap closes, something that was being sustained by the gap is no longer being sustained. The escape had been maintaining itself by the very energy given to examining it. Freedom, in this teaching, doesn't arrive after the escape stops. It is what was already there, underneath the analysis, underneath the naming, underneath the careful reconstruction of origins, waiting for the examiner to stop pretending to be separate from what it was examining. There is probably something happening right now, underneath this, alongside this, that hasn't been fully arrived into yet. Something that's been understood, contextualized, traced back to wherever it connects. Something that has a name and a history and a place in the larger story of who you are. And the understanding is real. That's not nothing. But understanding is not the same as contact. There's a difference between knowing the temperature of water and being in it. Somewhere in all the years of careful attention, the journals, the sessions, the long conversations with yourself at odd hours, the actual thing kept getting slightly postponed, not dramatically avoided, just deferred. There was always something to understand first, always another layer between the feeling and the full weight of its presence. Krishnamurti wasn't offering a better approach. He was pointing at the moment before the movement begins. That fraction of a second before something steps back and starts examining and asking, what is actually there, before anything is done about it? The question doesn't require an answer so much as a kind of honesty, because freedom, if it means anything here, isn't a state that follows enough understanding. It's what's present when the examining stops. Not because it was stopped, but because something was seen so directly that the examiner had nothing left to do. The feeling, unmediated, nothing between what's happening and the fact that it's happening. That isn't comfortable, necessarily. It isn't peaceful in the way that word usually promises something. It's more like the particular quality of something being real. No frame around it. No story explaining why it arrived, or what it means, or where it connects. Maybe that's what was being escaped all along. The feeling, yes, but more than that, the realness of it. If something in this brought up a feeling you know everything about and have never quite let arrive, I'd be curious what that is. Leave it in the comments if you want. Not as analysis, just as what it is. There's more of this here, if it matters.